Hi everybody. I'm going to go ahead and start. And first of all, thanks Jason and the rest of the NYSPTA crew and board for inviting me and letting me speak here. I am from the Midwest, actually from Michigan, and then I started out in Chicago. So my name is Sylvia Martinez-Mullally. And I am going to talk about the journey, and I'm so of data, and I'm so glad Lex came before me because he's with a great big company that we all know, and there's a lot of other great vendors here, and they don't make any moves unless they look at their data. So they're not going to look at their QR codes, bring that back. They're not going to look at different types of payment options. They're going to do different platforms, but they're always going to look at the data. And we, as parking professionals, we've got a lot of data. And sometimes we don't have a whole department that just looking at that data. Sometimes we're counting cars by hand. Sometimes we're dealing with staff. Sometimes we're dealing with a new administration coming in and they're going to change things, or somebody wants new innovation. And sometimes those decisions are just made on knee-jerk reactions, maybe a little politics, maybe it's the way things have always been. So when the other vendors are talking about the user experience, which is very, very important, I'm talking about the parking professional, the parking manager experience, a city parking manager, a university parking manager, and talking about how data shapes their lives. And does it take a lot of time and a lot of money out of their resources to get some of this data done? So, like I said, a lot of other companies, everyone's using data. So we have data, and it's coming fast and furiously, and we have got to be nimble, we've got to be flexible with our operations, and are we using data in the right way? And do we have a management system for data, for whatever the user wants for the next couple of years? So again, my name's Sylvia, and this is called really helping 3 parking managers, the journey so far, and creating a continuous live action parking study with their data, because we know our data is coming in every second, every couple minutes. So everyone here knows about data. Everyone's talked to me, hopefully came by the booth, and I showed them a platform that we're working on. And everyone knows that data is important, and analysis and analytics, the difference between that. And some organizations that we're working with right now: City of Milwaukee, City of Louisville, University of Wisconsin and Milwaukee, and then their journey from going from a manual data process to automating the process, what that looks like, and also what a live action parking study looks like, and do you need one? Do you want one? So the truth, data is every action that we take. Right? Park Mobile knows when we're coming in, when we're coming out. This hotel knows with a card if we came in late last night, if we came in early. So it's pretty much every action that we take, and the same thing with parking, if people are going through gates and things like that. And data really is coming through with us, to us, with just raw numbers and text, zeros and ones. It's unprocessed. It's not cleansed. It's not filtered out. And so we use these facts and statistics and we analyze them. So why is it important? Of course, just like the businesses, they want their ROI. They're not gonna make any snap decisions. They're gonna say, where's the data? And they're gonna want data on top of that. And why is it important for parking? Well, we know that if we have a lot of students coming in the fall, we're gonna have to budget for that. If we have less students, we're gonna have to budget for that. We're gonna schedule our enforcement. Maybe we don't need as many enforcement. Maybe we're gonna do that ticket through the mail. Maybe we're gonna see if we have the occupancy, if our percentages are high, maybe we should raise those rates, and then change regulations. Everyone's talking about the curb, so maybe we should start charging a little bit more at the curb, or charge at all, or no parking at the curb, things like that. And then visualize what's happening. So we have to communicate that to maybe non-parking professionals, maybe our council or university boards that really don't think about parking. That's the last thing to think about, right? So we've got to get some buy-in. So we know that that's really important. So the difference between data analytics, data analysis, analytics is just that broad term. I'm sure everyone knows about this. And it's the management of the whole process, the data process, and the tools and the techniques that we use. And the analysis is what we do all the time. Like, you're going to hear, like, what are the numbers, right? So that's what we're doing, is examining, we're cleansing it, and meaning making it sure that it has doesn't have inconsistencies, and we want quality data, right? Garbage in, garbage out. And we want to study that specific business insight, like what happens on a Tuesday or what happens on a Friday night from 6 to 8, and then kind of gauge and study that specific part, and then start getting value from that data. It's all about that value. So the difference between descriptive and predictive analytics, a lot of our companies are giving us business insights, like business intelligence. And then there's predictive analytics. So again, analytics is that whole broad term of, you know, the management of data, and the descriptive is what happened. Predictive shows what could happen. And I know, I don't think Cindy's here, but I know that everyone, especially our parking folks, we've got kind of a spidey sense. Like, I never did any decisions without talking to enforcement. Like, I would say, like, are they going to, would people pay an extra $1 in enforcement? Like, yeah, they would or they wouldn't. So we've got, like, that's data as well. And sometimes we sort of have the pulse, that front line has the pulse of what that user's gonna buy in. So another type of data is unstructured, just like that enforcement data. We can just drive by and look. I've heard a lot of people said, hey, the parking lots are emptier than last year. They're just driving by. Maybe you'll see more people walking, more students walking, more people using scooters and things like that. Enforcement, like I said, they're gonna say like, hey, this area is not as busy, or this is really super busy, this residential area, maybe we should go and start metering that or make it a smart zone. And then the curb, people are gonna say, well, people aren't just stopping and going, they're staying for a longer time. And then there's a upsurge and maybe some complainings, some being harassed as a parking officer, or is that being reported just more than usual? So that's all unstructured data. But the data we're getting from our companies and our partners really is CSV files or Excel spreadsheets. This looks familiar to anybody? When you're going to read some data. So when you put all of these together, it's structured data. And now we can start categorizing data, what time, what kind of vehicle, passenger vehicle, commercial. Obviously, if you have a commercial, then you're going to think, well, maybe we should start charging at the curb, things like that. And that's what you're hopefully making decisions based on. So it is essential. It's getting larger and larger. Everyone's talking about data-driven policies. Everybody wants to cultivate the data culture. But actually, do you have the tools to do that? And do you have the time? Well, the usage is what I've surveyed, and from talking to folks, every day you're looking at data. I know when I was a parking manager, the first thing I would do is look at the numbers after the weekend. There's a few times a week, and then there's once a month, and then there's when, hey, we need all the numbers for the next meeting. That could be the day or the week, or maybe you're preparing for the 6 months ahead. And then the top analysis reports are revenue. Again, everybody wants to see the number. People want the forecasts. How many tickets did we write? Should we invest more into apps and less into meters? Should we buy more meters? Should we buy more hardware or not? Occupancy forecast is really important. I'm sure everybody has their own secret formula where you're counting all your stalls and then your times and how much you could make off that, and you're comparing it to your historical data. So those are the top. If you think of any other reports, but these are some of the top reports that everyone's looking at. And then also comparing permit types, seeing if we had more fall than annual permits and things like that. So the top analysis tools are used today in the parking world that I see is Excel, spreadsheets, CSV. There's in-house servers. Some municipalities have that. And I see a lot of parking managers, parking professionals manually are counting or looking through their Excel and sheets and things like that. Some are actually creating their own platforms, their own business intelligent platforms, and things like that. So the communication methods is still email. It's still Excel. Sometimes it's just walking down the hall like, yeah, we got the numbers, we met them, it's a million or whatever. Sometimes it's PowerPoint presentations, PDF files, Word files, and then the favorite would be the charts, pie charts, and things like that. And what I'm seeing is, and I've done this before too, you're downloading a system from one vendor, another system from another vendor. and then you're manually putting those together and putting those in a spreadsheet and hoping those are going to be accurate, because if you're working for a city, that's going to be in the paper. So the first journey, what we're talking about is with parking managers and parking managements, and again, it's the user experience for that parking professional that's behind the scenes. And when we were talking to City of Milwaukee, so they've got a really an all-in-one app, and that's run by Persona Nada. And they've got some single space. They've got a lot of moving parts. Maybe this looks familiar to you. They've got their enforcement. They've got cameras. They've got gates. They've got single head. They have multi-space head. Multi-space pay stations. They've got their all-inclusive app. Then they've got some sensors in their garage. They have their permits too for the residents, and they have towing. So that's a lot of data coming. Does this look kind of familiar? And then there will probably be more partners coming in and maybe some leaving out. So what does that look like to manage it? It's over at least 10. So increasingly larger data sets. All these systems don't talk together, they're fragmented. You're gonna see a lot of consolidating partnerships now where there's no common language for our data. Sometimes we don't have the data, it's unstructured because some of these single head aren't giving us the, like an app that's like really up to date. How do you know when to hood your meters? This is some of the issues that City of Milwaukee's facing. And they've got this really cool app, but they want like their customers to know where the parking spaces are at, but they don't want to spend on the sensors. It's the Midwest. So they want a live parking map minute by minute. And they also want a way to forecast better, because right now they are just giving their best estimations. And the leadership is really maybe something that you think as well, but they want people to come to their city, enjoy, that's that user experience. They want their staff to be really efficient. They want, if there's a meter that's not working, they want to be right there to fix that meter, and they want people to have many, many options. City of Louisville has about 5 to 7 sources. Oh, by the way, City of Milwaukee, their data is run by the enforcement and the other an assistant parking manager, so it's all in-house how they're running their system, their data management system. City of Louisville has about 5 to 7 data sources. Again, same thing, larger data sets, fragmented. They have an IT team that works for the city that also does parking. So they have other things to do with the city, but they find themselves manually crunching these numbers and taking their time. And that might be cost for that department because that's a line item coming out of parking. They also want a live parking map, minute by minute. They want to put their call center and involve that into the process of their data, and they want to forecast better. And basically, they wanted a neutral partner. Some people like one vendor for everything, and that's great because we've got so many innovative vendors. Other places don't want one vendor. They don't want one vendor to own all the data. They want to have a neutral partner. So City of Louisville was somebody, an organization that was really important to them. University of Wisconsin and Milwaukee, again, 5 to 7 data sources. The data is really managed by 2 people, and they had the parking manager, and then he hired and created a position for parking analysts. So that's coming out of his budget. And one of the issues that I brought up, what happens when that person leaves and takes all that information away? That could happen. They could get very good. And so that's why I think parking managers have really got to start looking at the data and really understanding that. So again, they have an IT position that they created. They have revenue and occupancy rate forecasts, which everyone wants. They want a breakdown of each and every lot, and then comparable metrics, and they want a path going forward. So again, City of Milwaukee's in-house, a staff of 3. They do management from 20 to 40% weekly. That's crunching numbers. Louisville has more of a sophisticated IT staff that does a lot for the host city, but it's taken a lot of time out of what are the other things that they need to do. And then the university also has a small staff and had to hire an IT person. So they all have different directions, but similar issues, a manual, slow process. So the first thing we do is start and we talk about what they want their city or university to look like? Is there a clear goal? And that's where you have to start when you're doing a management system, because I know we're kind of playing catch up, but like, what are you trying to accomplish with your data? What are the priorities? Is it occupancy? Is it creating more revenue? Sometimes it is. Maybe it's having more parking spaces on the street and things like that. How often are you analyzing, and who's performing the analysis? Do we give them the correct tools? Is it still emails? Is it still spreadsheets? And what is the data management system? So what we first looked at is aggregating all this data. That's looking at all the APIs. Sometimes it's manual CSV files, the cameras. Sometimes your security cameras are a great source of data too. Enforcement, what's enforcement look like? Their apps, your permits, all put together and properly managed. Cleansed, looked for inconsistencies. You'd want your data to be very, very consistent because sometimes you're missing data sets, and that's going to throw all your estimations off, your forecasting off. So they go in and restructure this data, and they create a model. So from here on in, after that model is created, then the data stream is more efficient. And then finding out the reports you really need all the time, every day, every 6 months, every 3 months, and outlining some of the superpowers that you want, and that's about parking predictions. So some of the successes, instead of downloading, all these different systems, we've got it down to 1 or 2 clicks where you can create visualizations for your entire city, your entire university. A couple of clicks down, and you can get some tables for your budgeting, because everyone wants to look at data differently. I mean, your boss might say, I just want the numbers, and finance, we're like, I would need to see the itemized list, and then maybe the town hall meeting or student body wants to see a pie chart, things like that. And definitely want to compare reports. Occupancy is big, again. Overtime durations and the goals. Are you reaching your goals every year, or how are you doing every quarter, and things like that. Once you have all of this, you should be able to create a report, and then that's it. It's auto-generating with data. So every time you look at that report, it's always updated, up to the month, up to the year, up to the day, however. So we got that down to a couple of clicks, and once you accumulate all these reports and visualizations, you can start creating a data story and kind of looking back and saying, oh, okay, I can kind of see what we're doing, and that's all live data. So some of the data stories, again, it's collecting these visualizations, and because you want to get buy-in very, very quickly, speed to insights, and sometimes if you put too much data, then everyone asks too many questions, and you might be there for a couple of hours and lose the track and lose the focus of what you came in there for, more resources for enforcement, or you have a project you want to put some stalls in and things like that. So sometimes I've learned that too much data is too much. But you want to go in very quickly, tell your story efficiently, and get out, right? All right, and do your job. So, and so some of these, I also think that once you get your data aggregated and it becomes live, you won't need the need to count. You'll know your data a lot better, so when they want to build a new garage or a new system or those big projects, you'll have up to date instead of waiting for 3 to 4 years, always having a traffic study or something like that. You have a little more handle, we put control and more in your hands. So again, you can email for finance, pie charts, heat maps are great to show where, if you wanted to. I had a mayor, I was a parking manager, and the mayor came in and said, I want to take out 1,000 stalls because he wanted this walkable city, right? That was all the rage a couple of years ago. But no rhyme and reason what stalls were going to be taken out. And he wanted to take out the prime stalls that made all the money for us. So that's great, but what are you going to, now you're going to get everyone mad. Where are we going to park people? They didn't want to put a garage. We couldn't go in the resident area. So those are decisions I got out of, but they were going to do some of those huge projects without even looking at data, just on a whim. So that's fine if that's okay, but you at the end of the day, bad policy over bad policy, right? So that's one of the reasons why I really felt strongly about putting a program together, creating really a platform that I've always wanted, because I know that it would save me a lot of time. and money. And also, if you've worked very hard to get some of these projects in, you've got to protect them because you have a vision too. You're running that department, you're running that city, and that's important. So it's bringing value to your position too. So once you put these together, now you can start telling a data story. How did we recover? Are you putting your data story? How did you recover for 2020 and 2021? And what are your plans for 2022? If you don't have the plans, you might have somebody come in with some policies that may be going against some of the recovery efforts that you have, putting them together and visually showing them. If you need just the numbers, give them the numbers, but if you need to tell a story, you can do that. So the next step really is making this platform or a platform for data management or the platforms that you create yourselves, making that almost like a parking assistant. So that you won't have to have, I mean, we're doing more with less, right? So we've got to be prepared and use that automation. We're automating a lot of things. I mean, all your spam, that's AI automation. That should be put into the parking programs so that you can be more efficient. Why should you spend a couple of days crunching numbers when the numbers are going to change the next day? So you might want to look at some automation. That's going to help you with forecasting, telling your story to your stakeholders. And then once that's bundled up, then you can have that API. So that's your data, and you can push that to your front users, your students, your residents. You can put that in a web app or your apps for navigation, for paying for parking. Put all your live data there or not. You can keep it in-house to make better decisions. You can publicly put that out there so people know where the parking spaces are. And once you have that, if you use algorithms, you'll start using, you'll have machine learning, and that will learn the pattern of your parking and where people are going, not just the frequency, but the duration. And then you can start data sharing. Maybe you want to share to the other universities. Maybe when they're busy, you're not, and vice versa, or the next town over. That may be a possibility. We don't know. It's going to be an interconnected future, right? Interconnected infrastructure, self-driving cars. I wouldn't have thought of that a few years ago, but the world is changing, as Lex said. So things to consider for your journey. If you're having data management, if you have one or two, some of the private operators might have just one or two apps, and that's good. But if you're a municipality or university with more ways, you've got your scooters, you've got mobility, you've got transit, you might want to consider defining what are you trying to accomplish. I mean, is the goal to have money, or is the goal to have sustainability? Is the goal to be a new smart city? Do more with less? Are you getting, next year, are you going to get the same budget? Can you do the same things? So define your goals, review all these data points. Are they structured or not? I mean, do you have data coming in that's unstructured? Maybe you should start having a system to get all these enforcement complaints, or maybe some of these new ideas and structure them somehow. Do you have access to the data? I mean, are our partners given our data? Sometimes it might be a little harder than not, because you're going to need that data. So when you start looking to change things, you might want to look at historical data, and is that readily available for you, or are they going to make you pay? And the quality of that data. Is it fragmented? Is it incomplete? Is it missing data sets? Do you get actual insights? And can you understand it and communicate it? And how much time? How much time does it take you to do that? And is it effective data stories? And the time and costs is it getting so complicated where you're going to have to hire IT or hire another person? Is it a lot of manual work and things like that? So I am a former parking manager, and I am with an AA company called PZ. So we working with these the two municipalities and university to automate that whole process. And if anyone has any questions, I will take them. Thank you very much. Yes?
Thanks, so very, very interesting. Are you finding a lot of the software solution providers are providing like modern web services APIs now to pull the data, or are you still leveraging like spreadsheets and like kind of more, pulling an old CSV and then having it ingested? Because it obviously kills your ability to have like dynamic workflows,
Correct.
dynamic dashboards when you still have such a
More APIs than I thought. But yes, I mean, if you're going to go for some legacy gates and things like that, or legacy equipment, yeah, it would be a little bit difficult. But more, any data right now is better, and now it's the frequency of it going forward.
And are you finding that the companies out there are providing them free of charge, or that typically, are they charging, like they have typically like a charging model for the data access?
Some charge, but we haven't. We're right now, we believe that the university or the municipality owns that data, and we will work around that. And you can also do cameras, very inexpensive cameras, and use AI technology, and it will start learning those patterns as well. But we really feel that you shouldn't be buying hardware and sensors. You have enough data. Even if it's incomplete right now, it's still going to start. You're still going to start seeing those trends and those patterns emerge. It's better to start now than, I mean, how far are you going to get if you're not managing it? But yeah, we had a really good, and this is all new. I mean, now you're going to see in the industry, there's a parking data alliance. People are starting to connect the dots and like, wow, we've got to like start, this is a profession, a parking profession. And I believe that we are very close. I mean, before we just parking managers, now it's parking managers, comma, mobility, comma, transportation, comma, data analysts, would you think? But the whole point is, putting that together in a proper program. And it's going to make it a lot easier. I think a lot of the occupancy issues and everyone talks about there's no place to park, or why are you guys raising rates, is because we really haven't looked at the policy making and what's behind the policy. Or is it just, oh, we don't ticket there because of something, or we can't raise rates because they'll get mad. But I think that, like, Lex came up and he gave a great presentation with all this data, and then you probably had people around, okay, they're making some decisions based on something. And it's easier to get buy-in, and that's the whole point. Otherwise, we're going to have bad policy, and at the end of the day, now the enforcement is getting yelled at, and I mean that comes with the territory. But we definitely we've got the data to make better decisions. So if there's an easier way, if there's an automated way to use technology, why not start using that? We believe it should be accessible. This company does come from the Netherlands, Amsterdam, and they're all about bikes, as you know, right? But it wasn't overnight. It took them from the 70s and the 80s, where they had the same traffic congestion that we did. But they have data streams, and they wanted to really analyze and make better policies. And now we look at them and like, oh, okay, the mobility. So we can't get there unless we're starting to have like a conversation or a really looking at our data. And like I said, what I'm seeing is a lot of manual work that there's other ways to do that. So I love all the creative, talking to all parking managers. Everyone has, the Spidey sense. Some have a system that they're used to. But as you see, every year we have different partners, different vendors, different technology, and that's all just going to keep streaming data. So it's not going to stop. Yes.
I'll tread carefully on this one, but what you said was, the one organization, they look to maybe have multiple providers, where it gives them different information, essentially, right? So maybe they don't want to just have one parking company doing their, program or whatever it might be. So with that company also puts out data. So by having those multiple companies or having someone like yourself, does it kind of, like, is it possible then, what you're saying is if somebody comes in, potentially, they could manipulate that data the way they see fit, right? I mean, if you take a statistics class, you can spin those numbers how you want to fit your narrative. So
True.
Having multiple people, while it makes sense to have one provider per se, in a lot of instances, does it make more sense to have that internal competition, even though it may be more work?
Well, no, what I meant was one of the municipalities didn't want one vendor to have the management system run by them. Yeah, I don't think they would manipulate it. I mean, no, I don't think that would happen. But they wanted to make sure, what if that player left or changed, and they didn't want one. You know, I mean, some organizations want one vendor side, you know, one size fits all, and others think we want a neutral partner when it comes to centralizing that data. And they just choose to have a neutral partner centralize and different players that are working with them instead. That's what they think. But it's up to you, right? All right, well, thank you very much. Hope to see you again. This was a great party, by the way, so I enjoyed myself very much. Thank you, guys.